Ambassador Chen Wei stared at the holographic display floating above his desk. The message had arrived without warning, cutting through every security protocol Earth's finest minds had designed. The blue light cast strange shadows across his weathered face as he read the words that would change everything. By order of the Galactic Council, humanity will comply with the following demands within 30 standard galactic days. Chen had served as Earth's primary diplomat to the galaxy for 15 years. He had shaken hands with beings that breathed methane, negotiated trade deals with silicon-based life forms, and even shared meals with creatures that considered photosynthesis a form of entertainment. But he had never seen anything like this. The list of demands scrolled past his eyes like a death sentence. Withdraw from 80% of human colonies, surrender the entire Earth defense fleet, submit to council oversight of all human activities, accept permanent restrictions on population growth and technological development. His hands trembled as he reached for the communication panel. Within minutes, Admiral Sarah Torres materialized as a hologram in his office. Her military uniform was crisp despite the early morning hour, her gray hair pulled back in regulation style. Torres had commanded humanity's space forces for a decade, turning a collection of converted mining ships into something resembling a real fleet. "Admiral, we have a problem," Chen said, forwarding the message. Torres read in silence, her expression growing darker with each line. When she finished, she looked up with fire in her eyes. "They want us to give up everything we've built in 200 years of space travel." "It gets worse," Chen replied, activating another section of the message. "They're claiming we violated something called the non-interference protocols. They say we've been helping primitive species develop technology too quickly, helping them grow food and build water treatment plants." Torres snorted. "Real dangerous stuff." The ambassador pulled up a star chart showing human space. Red markers indicated the colonies they would have to abandon. Blue markers showed the handful they would be allowed to keep. "Look at this, Sarah. They want us to keep only Earth, Mars, and 3 research stations. Everything else goes." Torres studied the map, her tactical mind working through the implications. 27 million people live in those colonies. Where are they supposed to go? The message doesn't say. "I don't think they care." Both humans fell silent as the weight of the situation settled on them. For 2 centuries, humanity had spread across the stars with hope and determination. They had built new worlds, made friends with dozens of alien species, and contributed to galactic civilization. Now apparently they had done too well. Chen activated the final part of the message. The hologram changed to show a massive alien fleet positioned at the edge of human space. Hundreds of ships hung in the darkness, their designs unlike anything in Earth's databases. Some were sleek and crystalline. Others looked like living creatures stretched across kilometers of space. All of them bristled with weapons. "They sent proof they mean business," Chen said quietly. Admiral Torres leaned forward, studying the enemy formation. "I count at least 400 ships. Our entire fleet is maybe 60 vessels, and most of those are converted civilian craft. The Council represents 12 different species," Chen added. "Each one is thousands of years more advanced than us. Their smallest ships could probably destroy our largest battleships without breaking their shields." Torres stood up abruptly, pacing the small space the hologram allowed her. "So what do we do? Roll over and let them carve up human space like a birthday cake?" President Jackson has called an emergency session of the Earth Defense Alliance. Every world leader, every colony governor, every fleet commander. We meet in 6 hours to decide humanity's response. And what response could we possibly have against this? Torres gestured at the alien fleet display. Chen Wei had been thinking about that question since the message arrived. He had spent his entire career studying alien cultures, learning their languages, understanding their psychology. The Council species were old, powerful, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. They ruled the galaxy through a combination of overwhelming force and bureaucratic control that had lasted for thousands of years. But Chen had also learned something else in his time among the stars. The galaxy was vast, and even the Council couldn't watch everything at once. There were cracks in their perfect system, species that resented their rule, worlds that dreamed of freedom. Humanity wasn't the first race to challenge the Council, but they might be the first to survive it. "We fight," he said finally. Torres stared at him. "Chen, did you hear what I just said? 400 ships against 60. Technology gaps measured in millennia. They could wipe us out without breaking a sweat." "Maybe," Chen agreed, "but they made one mistake." "What's that?" "They gave us 30 days to think about it. The holographic display flickered as another message arrived. This one came from the human colony at Kepler 442, a mining world near the frontier. The colonists had detected council ships moving into their system. The aliens weren't waiting for the deadline. They were already positioning themselves for attack. Chen felt something cold settle in his stomach. The council's demands had been about humiliation and control, but this early movement suggested something else entirely. They weren't planning to accept human surrender. They were planning to make an example. Admiral, how long would it take to evacuate the frontier colonies? Torres was already running calculations in her head. With our current transport capacity, 3 months minimum, maybe 6 if we had to move everyone. We don't have 6 months. We might not even have 6 days. Both humans understood what that meant. The frontier colonies housed 15 million people, including entire families who had never seen Earth. Children who had been born under alien stars, elderly who had spent their final years building new worlds. All of them were now targets in a war they hadn't started and couldn't win. Chen Wei closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his diplomatic career. Admiral, I'm recommending to President Jackson that we reject the Council's demands. Chen, that's suicide. Maybe. But look at their terms again. Even if we surrender everything, they want to control our population growth. They want oversight of our technology. They want to treat us like children who can't be trusted with sharp objects. Chen opened his eyes, and Torres saw something there she had never seen before. That's not peace, Sarah, that's slavery. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady but grim. If we're going to fight, we need to be smart about it. Our ships can't match theirs in direct combat. What are you thinking? Guerrilla warfare. Hit-and-run attacks. Make them chase us through every asteroid field and gas cloud in human space. Make them pay for every colony they take. Chen nodded slowly. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than surrender. And hope that somewhere in this galaxy, there are other species who remember what freedom feels like. The holographic display dimmed as the first reports arrived from the frontier. Council ships were moving into attack positions around 3 different star systems. The invasion had begun 18 days early. Chen Wei looked at Admiral Torres one last time before ending the communication. In 6 hours, they would present humanity's answer to the galaxy. But he suspected the real answer was already being written in the space between the stars, where council ships prepared to show the upstart humans their place in the cosmic order. The message was clear. Humanity would not bow. Now they would have to prove they could survive the consequences of that choice. The first attack came without warning, just as Ambassador Chen Wei had feared. Captain Lisa Morrison was having breakfast with her daughter when the alarm started screaming across New Manitoba Colony. Through the large windows of their apartment, she could see the agricultural fields stretching toward the horizon under the pale blue sun. It was supposed to be a peaceful morning on a peaceful world where families grew food for the expanding human population. Then the sky caught fire. The orbital defense platforms died first, their metal hulks exploding in brilliant flashes of light. Morrison had helped design those platforms, knew every bolt and circuit in their construction. They should have been able to hold off any reasonable attack for hours. Instead, they lasted 37 seconds. Mommy, what's happening? 8-year-old Emma pressed against the window, watching debris rain down from orbit. Morrison grabbed her daughter and ran for the emergency shelter. All around the colony, families were doing the same thing. Parents carrying children, elderly couples helping each other down into underground bunkers that were supposed to protect them from asteroid strikes and solar flares. Nobody had built them to withstand an alien invasion. The council ships appeared like ghosts, phasing through the upper atmosphere without causing so much as a ripple in the air. Morrison caught a glimpse of one as she sealed the shelter door. It looked like a crystal flower made of living light, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. She had studied alien technology for 15 years and had never seen anything like it. The first energy beam struck the colony's main power plant. The explosion shook the ground so hard that Morrison thought they were having an earthquake. Emergency lighting flickered on in the shelter as families huddled together in the darkness, listening to the sounds of their world being destroyed above them. Morrison activated her communication link, trying to reach the colony command center. Static answered her, mixed with fragments of panicked voices. The defense grid was gone. The spaceport was burning. The Council ships were methodically working their way through every human installation on the planet. But they weren't stopping there. The evacuation ships had launched the moment the attack began, carrying as many colonists as possible toward the edge of the system. Morrison watched the tracking display on her emergency tablet, praying that her neighbors would make it to safety. The civilian transports were lightly armed converted cargo haulers, never meant for combat. Against Council technology, they might as well have been flying targets. The first transport died 8 minutes after launch. Its name was New Hope, and it carried 300 people, including the entire Chen family from Sector 7. Morrison had attended little Danny Chen's birthday party just 2 weeks ago. The ship simply vanished from the tracking display, no explosion, no debris field. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The second transport lasted longer. Freedom's dream made it almost to the jump point before a Council ship caught up with it. This time Morrison could see the attack through the shelter's external cameras. A beam of blue light touched the human ship, and it came apart like a flower blooming in reverse, pieces spreading out in perfect symmetry before dissolving into nothing. Morrison held her daughter tighter and tried not to scream. The pattern repeated across human space. At the mining station orbiting Kepler 442, 3,000 workers watched helplessly as Council ships dismantled their facility piece by piece. The aliens used some kind of molecular disruptor that turned solid metal into drifting clouds of atoms. Director Park sent out a final message before the communication array died. "Tell Earth we tried to fight. Tell them we never surrendered." The research facility on Proxima Centauri b suffered the worst fate. Dr. Sarah Kim had been leading a joint human-alien project to develop new medical technologies, working alongside scientists from 6 different species to cure diseases that affected multiple forms of life. The Council classified it as weapons research and ordered the complete destruction of the facility. 50,000 people lived and worked on that station: scientists, support staff, families, even alien researchers who had become friends with their human colleagues. The Council ships surrounded the facility and demanded immediate surrender. Dr. Kim tried to explain that they were working on medical treatments, not weapons. She broadcast their research data, showed the aliens exactly what they were doing. The Council ships opened fire anyway. The destruction was thorough and merciless. The station's shields lasted less than a minute against weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Morrison watched the death of Proxima Centauri b from her shelter on New Manitoba. The signal relayed through emergency communication networks before they too went dark. Dr. Kim's last message was simple. They're not interested in truth. They're not interested in justice. They just want us gone. But the Council had made a mistake, one that would cost them dearly in the months to come. The attack on the civilian evacuation ships hadn't been planned. The Council's military doctrine focused on destroying military targets and accepting surrender from civilian populations. But some of their commanders were young, eager to prove themselves against the upstart humans. Others simply didn't understand the difference between human military and civilian vessels. When the images reached Earth, they changed everything, Admiral. Torres received the reports in her command center deep beneath the surface of Luna. The tactical displays showed the systematic destruction of human installations across 3 star systems. Red markers indicated destroyed facilities. Gray markers showed planets under occupation. The few green markers representing intact human positions were scattered and isolated. But Torres wasn't looking at the tactical display. She was watching the recovered video from the evacuation ships, broadcast by their emergency beacons before they died. She saw families running for escape pods that would never launch. Children pressed against viewing ports watching their homes burn. Parents holding babies as their ships came apart around them. President Jackson's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth. "Admiral, you have authorization for Project Lazarus. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, make them pay." Project Lazarus had been humanity's deepest secret for 30 years. While the Council thought humans were primitive and harmless, Earth's best military minds had been preparing for exactly this scenario. They knew that someday, someone in the galaxy would decide that humanity needed to be controlled or eliminated. They had planned accordingly. Torres activated the first phase with a simple voice command: Phoenix Rising. Across human space, hidden transmitters awakened. Modified civilian ships received coded signals and began changing course. Research facilities that appeared to be destroyed were actually underground, protected by holographic camouflage. Military units that had been listed as destroyed in official reports began moving toward their assigned targets. The Council had won the first round by using superior technology and overwhelming force. They had killed thousands of innocent people and conquered human worlds with contemptuous ease. But they had also done something that no alien species had ever managed in 200 years of human space exploration. They had made humanity truly angry. On New Manitoba, Captain Morrison emerged from her shelter to find her colony in ruins. The beautiful agricultural fields were craters filled with poisonous smoke. The spaceport was a twisted wreck of metal and concrete, but the communication array was still functional. Hidden in a camouflaged bunker that the Council ships had missed, Morrison activated the emergency network and sent a single message to Earth. New Manitoba reporting. Colony destroyed, population in shelters. We're ready for Phase 2. Similar messages came from across human space. The Council thought they had delivered a crushing blow that would force humanity to surrender. Instead, they had just signed their own death warrant. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin in earnest, and the galaxy would learn why humans had earned a reputation for being unpredictable and dangerous when cornered. Admiral Torres smiled grimly as the first Lazarus units reported ready for deployment. The Council wanted to see what humans were really capable of when pushed to the edge. They were about to find out. Deep beneath the surface of Ceres, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. James Park stared at the alien technology spread across his laboratory tables. 3 weeks had passed since the Council's devastating first strike, and humanity was finally ready to strike back. The Council ship components glowed with their own internal light, defying every principle of human physics. Park had been studying captured alien technology for 20 years as part of Project Lazarus, but these were different. These pieces came from active enemy vessels, torn from the wreckage of the Council fleet that had attacked Proxima Centauri b. The phase generators are the key, Park explained to Admiral Torres through the secure holographic link. They don't just move through solid matter, they briefly exist in multiple dimensions at once. It's like they're partly in our reality and partly somewhere else. Torres studied the incomprehensible alien device floating in the containment field. Can we copy it? Copy it? Admiral, I can barely understand what it does, let alone how it does it. This technology is thousands of years ahead of anything we've developed. Then we don't copy it, Torres said firmly. We steal it. That was the heart of Project Lazarus. For 30 years, humanity's best military planners had studied the galaxy's major powers, learning their strengths and weaknesses. The Council species were individually superior to humans in almost every way. They were stronger, smarter, lived longer, and had technology that seemed like magic. But they had one critical weakness. They had been the dominant power for so long that they had forgotten how to fight a truly desperate enemy. Humans, on the other hand, had been fighting desperate battles since the day they first looked up at the stars. Commander Maria Santos adjusted her stolen Council uniform as she reviewed the mission briefing one final time. The genetic modifications hurt, making her skin feel like it was crawling with insects, but they allowed her to pass for a Zephyrian in dim lighting. The vocal implants were worse, requiring surgery that had left her throat raw and aching, but they let her speak perfect Zephyrian with the right tonal frequencies. Remember, Admiral Torres said through the secure communication link, you only have one chance at this. Once you're aboard that dreadnought, we can't help you. Santos nodded, checking her equipment one last time. The modified tools looked like standard Council maintenance gear, but each one had been carefully redesigned by Earth's best engineers. Hidden weapons, explosive charges, and most importantly, a computer virus designed by humanity's top artificial intelligence researchers. The plan was insane by any reasonable military standard. A single human was going to infiltrate a Council dreadnought, one of the most heavily defended ships in the galaxy, and attempt to capture it intact. The chances of success were roughly the same as winning the lottery while being struck by lightning. But humanity no longer had time for reasonable plans. Santos launched from the hidden base on Titan, piloting a modified Council shuttle that had been captured during the attack on the research station. The modifications had taken 2 weeks of around-the-clock work by the best engineers humanity could find. On the outside, it looked exactly like a standard Council maintenance vessel. On the inside, it bristled with human technology adapted from alien designs. The target was the CNS Eternal Dominion, a massive Council dreadnought leading the occupation of the Tau Ceti system. Intelligence reports indicated it carried over 10,000 crew members from 4 different species, enough firepower to destroy a planet and, most importantly, the complete technical specifications for Council fleet operations. Santos approached the dreadnought through the debris field left behind by the destroyed human colony ships. The Council had left the wreckage floating in space as a warning to other systems. Now it provided perfect camouflage for her approach. Maintenance shuttle requesting permission to dock, she transmitted in flawless Zephyrian, using codes provided by humanity's network of deep cover agents. The response came immediately. Permission granted. Proceed to docking Bay 7 for scheduled repairs to environmental systems. Santos smiled grimly. The codes were working perfectly, which meant their agents were still in place despite the increased security following the war's outbreak. For 50 years, humans had been infiltrating Council society, taking jobs as maintenance workers, clerks, and low-level technicians. Positions that were beneath the notice of the superior Council species, but which provided access to critical infrastructure. Docking Bay 7 was enormous, designed to service multiple ships at once. Santos piloted her shuttle through the energy barrier that held atmosphere inside the bay, trying to act like just another maintenance worker arriving for a routine job. Around her, Council crew members moved with the casual efficiency of a military force that had never faced a real challenge. That was about to change. Santos made her way through the ship's corridors, following the maintenance routes her deep cover agents had mapped over years of careful observation. The Eternal Dominion was a city in space with multiple levels containing everything from crew quarters to manufacturing facilities. But Santos only cared about one location, the central computer core. She passed 3 security checkpoints using forged authorization codes, nodded politely to a Zephyrian engineer who didn't give her a second glance, and even helped a young Council technician carry some equipment to avoid suspicion. By the time she reached the computer core, she had been aboard the ship for 43 minutes and hadn't raised any alarms. The core itself was a crystal matrix the size of a small building, pulsing with information flows that controlled every system on the ship. Santos connected her human-designed interface to the alien system, watching as lines of code began flowing between the two technologies. The virus was a masterpiece of human ingenuity. Instead of trying to destroy the Council systems, it learned from them, adapting and evolving in real time. Within minutes, it had mapped the ship's entire computer network and began taking control of critical systems. First, the internal communications went down, preventing the crew from coordinating a response. Then the artificial gravity fluctuated, causing confusion throughout the ship. Finally, the weapon systems locked out their operators, leaving the mighty dreadnought defenseless. Santos activated her emergency beacon, sending a coded signal to the human fleet waiting in the outer system. Phase 2 of the operation was beginning. The human ships that emerged from hyperspace didn't look like much compared to the massive Council dreadnought. They were converted civilian vessels, mining ships equipped with military weapons, cargo haulers reinforced with armor plating. But they had one advantage the Council had never encountered. They were crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. Admiral Torres commanded the operation from the bridge of the converted colony ship New Dawn. Around her, displays showed the tactical situation as her ships surrounded the disabled dreadnought. The Council vessel was 10 times larger than her flagship and could have destroyed her entire fleet under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances anymore. All ships, begin boarding operations, Torres commanded. Remember, we need that ship intact. Human Marines stormed aboard the Eternal Dominion through multiple access points, using captured Council technology to phase through the ship's armor. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, appearing behind shocked Council defenders and disappearing before return fire could find them. The battle for the ship lasted 3 hours. Council security forces fought with professional skill and superior equipment, but they had never faced human desperation before. Marines who should have been dead continued fighting with wounds that would have killed any other species. Soldiers surrounded by enemies activated suicide charges to clear paths for their comrades. Commander Santos met Admiral Torres in the dreadnought's command center, both women grinning despite their exhaustion. Around them, human technicians worked frantically to download the ship's entire database before Council reinforcements could arrive. "How much did we get?" Torres asked. "Everything," Santos replied. "Ship designs, tactical doctrines, fleet deployment schedules, even the personal files of Council leaders. This changes everything, Admiral." Torres nodded, looking out at the stars through the command center's massive viewing windows. In the distance, she could see the wreckage of human colonies, the price her species had paid for this moment. But she could also see something else. Hope. The captured technology would let humanity build ships that could match Council vessels. The intelligence data would reveal weaknesses in their enemies' formations. Most importantly, the psychological impact would spread throughout the galaxy. The mighty Council wasn't invincible after all. "Signal the fleet," Torres ordered. "We're taking the ship home." As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace with their captured prize, Admiral Torres sent a message to Earth that would change the course of the war. Phase 2 complete. We have their technology. Now we make them pay for every drop of human blood they've spilled. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's reputation for unpredictability was well earned. The Council had awakened something they didn't understand, and now it was coming for them with stolen technology and unbridled fury. The hunters had become the hunted. 6 months after the capture of the Eternal Dominion, the war had transformed into something the Galactic Council never expected. In the massive shipyards orbiting Luna, human workers labored around the clock to build vessels that shouldn't have been possible. The new ships defied easy classification. They looked human at first glance, with the angular armor plating and practical design philosophy that marked Earth engineering. But closer inspection revealed impossible curves that bent space around them, weapons that fired energy the color of captured starlight, and shields that flickered between dimensions. Chief Engineer Rebecca Park, Dr. James Park's daughter, stood in the observation deck watching the latest ship take shape. The Retribution was humanity's first true hybrid dreadnought, combining captured Council technology with human industrial innovation. It was also a symbol of something that scared the Council, more than any weapon. Proof that humans could adapt alien technology faster than anyone thought possible. "The integration is working better than we hoped," she reported to Admiral Torres through the communication link. "We're not just copying their technology anymore. We're improving it." Torres studied the technical readouts from her command center on Luna. The numbers were impressive, but she knew the real test would come in combat. "How many ships will be ready for the Vega operation?" 43 hybrid vessels plus 67 upgraded human ships. It's not much against the Council's primary shipyard, but it's what we have. The Vega shipyard was the heart of the Council's military power, a massive complex that had been building warships for 3,000 years. Intelligence reports indicated it was protected by over 200 Council vessels and planetary defense systems that could destroy small moons. It was also the most important target in the galaxy, because it represented something more valuable than ships or weapons. It represented the Council's certainty that they were untouchable. Admiral Torres had been planning this attack for months, ever since the captured data from the Eternal Dominion revealed the shipyard's true importance. Destroying it wouldn't just damage the Council's military capacity. It would prove to every species in the galaxy that the ancient regime could be beaten. The attack fleet assembled in the empty space between star systems, a collection of human vessels that would have been impossible to imagine a year earlier. The modified civilian ships that had formed humanity's original fleet were still there, but now they carried hybrid weapons and Council shield generators. The new construction ships looked like metal sculptures of controlled fury, bristling with weapons that bent the laws of physics. But the most important vessels in the fleet didn't look dangerous at all. The transport ships appeared to be standard human cargo haulers, the kind used to move supplies between colonies. Their holds were filled with something more valuable than any conventional cargo. Representatives from 17 different alien species, all of whom had suffered under Council rule for centuries. The Cathari delegation spoke for 12 subjugated worlds that had been strip-mined to fuel Council expansion. The Nexari brought information about forced labor camps where their people had been worked to death, building Council infrastructure. The Thurians carried evidence of genetic experiments performed on their children to create better slaves. For 3,000 years, the Council had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. They had convinced the galaxy that resistance was impossible, that challenging their authority meant extinction, but humanity's successful raids had cracked that certainty, and other species were beginning to remember what hope felt like. Commander Maria Santos, promoted after her success aboard the Eternal Dominion, led the infiltration team that would begin the attack. Her people had spent months preparing for this mission, studying captured Council protocols and building equipment that could fool the most sophisticated sensors in the galaxy. "Remember," Admiral Torres said during the final briefing,
"This isn't just about destroying their shipyard.
"This is about proving that the Council can be beaten. Every species in the galaxy will be watching." The attack began with what appeared to be a routine supply convoy approaching the Vega system. Santos commanded a modified cargo hauler that looked exactly like the vessels that delivered materials to the shipyard every day. Her ship's transponder broadcast legitimate identification codes stolen from the captured Council database. But hidden in the cargo holds were human Marines equipped with the latest hybrid technology, along with weapons that would have been pure fantasy a year earlier. The supplies they carried included AI-guided explosives designed to target the specific materials used in Council ship construction. The Vega system's defenses were impressive even by Council standards. Orbital platforms mounted weapons that could destroy capital ships with a single shot. Patrol fleets moved in precise formations that had been perfected over millennia. The shipyard itself was surrounded by energy fields that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. None of it mattered against an enemy that didn't fight fair. Santos's infiltration team struck first, using phase technology to appear inside the shipyard's central control facility. They moved like ghosts through corridors that should have been impregnable, neutralizing guards with weapons that left no evidence of their passage. Within minutes, they had control of the facility's primary systems. The orbital defenses went dark just as Admiral Torres's fleet emerged from hyperspace. The Battle of Vega became legend within hours of its conclusion. Human ships appeared throughout the system like avenging spirits, their hybrid technology allowing them to strike from impossible angles. Council defenders found their perfect formations shattered by enemies that could phase through solid matter and strike from multiple dimensions at once. But the real shock came when the destroyed human vessels revealed their true nature. Ships that appeared to be burning wrecks suddenly erupted with fresh weapons fire, catching Council forces completely off guard. Cargo haulers transformed into assault vessels bristling with hidden armaments. Even the transport ships revealed their secret. They weren't carrying supplies. They were carrying rebel fleets from 17 different species. The sight of Cathari warships fighting alongside human vessels sent shockwaves through the Council command structure. For 3,000 years, no species had dared to openly challenge their authority. Now they faced a coalition of rebels that had been inspired by humanity's unexpected success. The battle raged for 18 hours. Council reinforcements poured into the system from 3 different sectors, bringing the total enemy force to over 400 ships. It should have been more than enough to crush the human-led coalition. Instead, it became a demonstration of why the Council's rigid tactics were useless against human unpredictability. Admiral Torres commanded the battle from the bridge of the Retribution, coordinating attacks that followed no pattern the Council strategists could understand. Human ships would appear to retreat only to circle back through parallel dimensions. Formations that looked chaotic proved to be carefully planned traps that caught Council vessels in crossfires. The decisive moment came when Torres deployed humanity's newest weapon, AI-guided swarm missiles that adapted their targeting in real time. Unlike the programmed weapons the Council used, these missiles literally thought like humans, changing tactics mid-flight to exploit weaknesses their targets didn't even know they had. The Council's perfect defensive formations crumbled under the assault of weapons that refused to follow. Predictable patterns, ships that had never been damaged in thousands of years of warfare, found themselves being torn apart by missiles that seemed to anticipate their every move. When the Vega shipyard's central facility exploded, taking 3,000 years of accumulated ship construction data with it, the remaining Council forces finally broke and ran. The victory was complete, but Torres knew its real importance lay beyond the tactical success. Throughout the galaxy, Species that had never dared to dream of freedom were watching human ships destroy the Council's most important facility. The message was clear. The ancient regime was not invincible. As human and allied ships began salvage operations in the ruins of the shipyard, Torres received a transmission that confirmed what she had hoped for. Rebellion was spreading across the galaxy. Worlds that had submitted to Council rule for millennia were declaring independence. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rising up against their oppressors. The Council had created this war by trying to crush humanity before it became a threat. Instead, they had awakened something they couldn't understand: the idea that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Standing on the bridge of her ship amid the wreckage of Council power, Admiral Torres sent a message to Earth that would mark the beginning of the end for the ancient regime. Vega shipyard destroyed. Coalition successful. The galaxy is ready to be free. The Council still commanded hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships, but they had lost something more important than any military asset. They had lost the fear that had kept their subjects in line for 3,000 years. The revolution had begun, and it was spreading faster than they could stop it. Humanity had kept its promise. They had made the Council pay for every drop of human blood that had been spilled. Now they were going to finish what the Council had started. 2 years after the Battle of Vega, Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the great assembly hall that had once been the Council's seat of power. The building itself was unchanged, still an imposing structure of crystal and living metal that stretched toward the sky of the former Council capital world. But everything else was different. Where once 12 species had ruled over hundreds, representatives from 47 different civilizations now gathered to debate the future of the galaxy. The rigid hierarchy that had governed galactic civilization for 3 millennia had been replaced by something that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier: a democracy. Chen watched as delegates from across the galaxy filed into their seats, each species contributing their unique perspective to the new Galactic Federation. The Cathari brought their skill with planetary engineering. The Nixari offered their knowledge of deep space navigation. The Thurians shared their expertise in biological sciences. Even former Council species had joined the Federation, their governments overthrown by popular revolutions inspired by humanity's example. It's hard to believe this all started with a 30-day ultimatum, Admiral Torres said, joining Chen at the viewing platform overlooking the assembly floor. Chen nodded, remembering that day in his office when the Council's demands had seemed like a death sentence for humanity. They thought they were crushing a rebellion before it could start. Instead, they created the very revolution they feared. The final phase of the war had been swift once the galaxy-wide uprising began. Council fleets found themselves fighting on hundreds of fronts simultaneously as world after world declared independence. Their ancient strategy of overwhelming force became useless when they were outnumbered by enemies who had learned to fight like humans. The decisive battle hadn't been a military engagement at all. It had been the Council's own member species voting to dissolve their government and join the Federation. Faced with revolution from within and invasion from without, the remaining Council leaders had finally accepted what Admiral Torres had tried to tell them from the beginning. Their time was over. The Thurian representative is asking for the floor, Torres observed, watching the assembly below. Ambassador Keth Mara rose from the Thurian delegation, their translator device converting their harmonic speech into words the universal communicators could handle. Honored representatives, we have gathered today to address the final article of the Federation Charter, the question of humanity's role in our new government. Chen felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment they had all been working toward, but also the one he feared most. For 2 years, human ships had protected Federation worlds from the last remnants of Council forces. Human technology had been shared freely with any species that requested it. Human diplomatic efforts had prevented dozens of conflicts between former enemies, learning to work together, but some representatives questioned whether humanity deserved a special position in the government they had done so much to create. The humans saved us all, declared Representative Zexvaler of the Cathari delegation. Without their courage, we would still be slaves to the Council. They should lead the Federation as they led the rebellion. With respect to our human friends, countered Representative Neth Karis of the Hegemony Worlds, the Federation was founded on the principle of equality among species. No one race should hold power over the others, no matter how they earned that power. Chen had heard this debate countless times over the past year, Some species wanted humanity to take the Council's place as galactic rulers, believing that the victors in war deserved to govern in peace. Others insisted that replacing one dominant species with another would simply recreate the problems they had fought to solve. Both sides were missing the point. Admiral Torres stepped forward to address the assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. Representatives of the Federation, I speak as the military commander who led humanity's forces through this war. I have seen the cost of domination, both to those who rule and those who are ruled. Humanity doesn't want to govern the galaxy. We want to help build something better. She activated a holographic display showing the Federation's current territory. Hundreds of worlds glowed with the blue light that marked free systems, while gray zones indicated areas still under Council control or suffering from post-war chaos. The old Council ruled through fear and overwhelming force. They conquered because they believed they had the right to control other species. But we've learned something different in the last 2 years. We've learned that cooperation is stronger than domination. Chen smiled as Torres outlined humanity's proposal for the Federation's future. No single species would hold ultimate authority. Instead, the government would rotate leadership positions among all member civilizations, with decisions made by consensus rather than decree. Military forces would be multinational, with human, Cathari, Nexari, and other species serving together on integrated crews. Most importantly, the Federation would be dedicated to protecting the freedom of all its members, not just the strong ones. But what about the remaining Council forces? Asked Representative Multhara of the Crystal Worlds. They still control 30 systems and have threatened to destroy any world that joins the Federation. Torres's expression hardened. The war crimes committed by Council remnants will not go unpunished. But we won't become conquerors to stop conquest. Federation forces will defend our member worlds and assist any system that requests liberation. But we won't force freedom on anyone. It was a fine distinction, but an important one. The Federation would fight to protect its values, but it wouldn't impose those values through military force. Species would choose their own governments, even if those choices disappointed their neighbors. The debate continued for hours as representatives raised concerns and suggested modifications to the proposed charter. But Chen could see the consensus building. The galaxy had experienced 3,000 years of authoritarian rule. They were ready to try something different. The final vote was unanimous. The Galactic Federation would be governed by the principles humanity had proposed: equality, cooperation, and mutual defense. No species would rule over the others, but all would work together to protect the freedom they had fought so hard to achieve. As the assembly adjourned, Chen found himself on the observation deck overlooking the capital city. The streets below bustled with activity as beings from dozens of different worlds went about their daily lives. Children of multiple species played together in the parks. Restaurants served food from across the galaxy. Markets sold art and technology from civilizations that had been enemies just a few years earlier. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions between former enemies, economic problems left over from the war, and political disputes that sometimes threatened to tear the Federation apart. But it was free, and that made all the difference. Admiral Torres joined him at the railing, both humans watching the diverse crowd below. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. Chen considered the question carefully. The Federation faced enormous challenges. Integrating dozens of different species with conflicting values and interests would never be easy. The remaining Council forces were still dangerous, and there were other threats in the galaxy that hadn't yet revealed themselves. But humanity had proven something important during the war. Free people fighting for their homes were stronger than any empire built on fear and oppression. The Federation embodied that principle on a galactic scale. "It'll last as long as people remember what they're fighting for," Chen finally answered. "As long as they remember that freedom is worth defending no matter the cost." In the distance, ships from across the galaxy approached the orbital platforms that surrounded the capital world. Human vessels flew alongside Cathari cruisers, Nexari scouts and converted Council ships now serving under Federation colors. The sight would have been impossible just 3 years earlier, when the galaxy was divided between rulers and subjects. Now it was divided between those who chose freedom and those who preferred chains. Admiral Torres activated her personal communicator, sending a message to Earth that would be recorded in the archives of human history. Mission accomplished. The galaxy is free. Humanity's children can grow up among the stars, knowing they'll never have to bow to anyone again. As the sun set over the capital of the new Galactic Federation, Chenwei reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with an ultimatum that seemed like humanity's death sentence. Instead, it had become the galaxy's birth certificate as a free civilization. The Council had been right about one thing: humanity was dangerous when pushed to the edge. But they had been wrong about what that danger represented. It wasn't the threat of conquest or domination. It was the idea that all beings deserved to choose their own destiny, no matter who tried to stop them. That idea had proven more powerful than any weapon the Council possessed. Now it would shape the galaxy for generations to come, ensuring that the sacrifice of those who died fighting for freedom would never be forgotten. The stars belonged to everyone now, and humanity had helped make it possible. The war was over. The real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning.